Today is Christ the King Sunday, and Christ as King. It's a metaphor through which we can understand the reality of Jesus before us. And there are a lot of metaphors that we have for Jesus to help us out. One metaphor that I experienced growing up early on in my Baptist background was Jesus as friend. And we would sing songs like, "What a friend we have in Jesus." And that was so real to us. I don't know, do you know that song, "What a friend we have in Jesus"? Well, if you don't know that, I'll bet you know the Doobie Brothers, right? Jesus is just all right with me, type thing. Jesus is my friend. He takes me by the hand. I guess that's a rock hymn, huh? Do you know Jesus as your friend? Do you? I sure hope so. Jesus tells us, "You are my friends if you do everything I tell you to do." We must understand Jesus as our friend. Another one is Jesus, my brother. Now, this is a real fundamental one with a lot of deep theological ramification. After all, it all assumes the incarnation that Christ, the eternal Logos, took upon himself flesh like us and become our brothers. He becomes the firstborn of all his brothers. We have Christ as an elder brother. Have you experienced Jesus as an elder brother? I don't know, maybe you've had some trouble with your elder brothers. I hope not, but you get the idea, right? Yes. And even when we come to communion, we partake of the body and blood of Christ. We are the same blood, same body of Christ. So Christ, our brother, is a very important idea, a metaphor through which we can understand God. Oh, here's one. Christ, our lover. And you say, "Oh my goodness," if you're a guy, you might say, "Father John, I'm a dude. I don't get into that," right? This sounds kind of weird to me. But what I have to say to you is this. You need to get in touch with your anima, your feminine side, because in the deep side, the deep structures of our faith, the church is feminine. Yes. And Christ is in love with us, as crazy in love with us as a man can be crazy in love with a woman. So we have to get used to that. Okay. Christ, our lover. Do you know that? Do you know Christ as my lover? That song, "Jesus, lover of my soul, let me to his bosom fly." It's a very intense metaphor. And yet it's true. That's how we have to come to understand Jesus. Now, all of these three metaphors are one of intimacy. Aren't you glad that Jesus is intimate with us? Yes, a friend, a brother, and lover. But today, we have the metaphor of a king. That's not a warm and fuzzy idea. By definition, kingship is a transcendent idea. Yes. To come before a king, you just can't elbow your way in. There's a certain decorum that's demanded of the king. And the king is dressed Yahweh Malach, Geut lavesh, sorry about that, I don't know the English of it. Yahweh reigns, clothed in majesty. Malach Yahweh Oz Hitazar. He is clothed and girded with strength and power. As the psalm tells us that holiness befits his house. Dear brothers and sisters, let me make a suggestion. We just don't understand kings and kingship. But back in the day when there were kings, kings were terrifying. Yeah, they were terrifying. Now, since we drove out the king couple hundred years ago, it doesn't come natural for us to even know or even to connect with this idea, this motif of Christ the King. It's kind of like a little relic that we kind of talk about, but we really don't really embrace it and understand it at all. So, we have to teach ourselves the motif. And I'll tell you why you have to teach yourself this. If God is all warm fuzzies over here as our friend and as our brother and as our lover, we have no idea really of Jesus in the sense that you have to live in tensions of multiple motifs. We have to understand that Jesus is transcendent. Rex tremende majestatis, a king of awful majesty, and that he is terrifying to all creation because he's uncreated. He's vast, beyond all calculation. Dear brothers and sisters, if we don't get used to coming before Jesus as king in this life, we're going to be all that more terrified in the next life when we do meet our Maker. And terror is not a bad thing. If you actually read the Gospels carefully, you will note that not only Jesus was in love with his disciples, they hung out, they had a great time together, but you'll also know that a common reaction to Jesus was sheer terror. When he stills the storm and he calls out and nature obeys him, he's in one end of the boat and all the disciples are getting as far as they can away from him on the other end of the boat. Can you imagine being in the boat with God? Think about it. They were always terrified of Jesus. And terror, again, is not a bad thing. We're born for excitement. We're born for terror. If there's a holy terror, there's bad terror, but there's a holy terror, and it thrills the soul when you're before it. We come before King in awe. You can't worship that which you understand. And in this culture, understanding is everything. We're afraid of the dark. We're afraid of mystery. We're afraid of anything we don't understand. Dear brothers and sisters, we can never understand God. He's above and beyond words, concepts. And even in these metaphors we're using, that's what they are, metaphors, just to help us move in the direction of coming before Jesus. So, what do? We have to train ourselves to become before the King. And so, again, I taught you a phrase before, lex tremende, lex orandi, I get my ex orandi lex credendi. The way you pray, the way you approach this sanctuary, which is God's throne room, it determines the way you believe. That is, if you come in here with your body and you bow before the King of the universe who is here thoughtfully, and if you pray the prayers thoughtfully, you listen to the words, you know what will happen. You'll start believing what you're doing and believing what you're praying. We have to train ourselves. And we can do this. I've got such a long way to go myself. But we have to do this. If we're just living here over the metaphors of intimacy, we will be superficial. But if we can enter in also in the tension of this transcendent metaphor of Christ the King, we will become rounded. We will become theologically deep. Theological maturity is defined by being able to live in tension, in paradox. And that's what I'm inviting you today as we observe Christ the King.